Everyone believes they know their partner. Kate thought so too. But one day, her life changed in an instant. She found something unexpected. A faint trace of perfume on the collar of Alex's shirt that definitely wasn't hers. An unusual tone in his voice when she asked how his day went. And then there was that moment when she accidentally saw his phone screen. A message. Short, yet so mysterious. "I'm thinking about us. Waiting for your reply." It wasn't from her. Her heart froze. Was it just a friendly text? Or was she on the brink of uncovering a truth that would change her life forever? She cheated on me with my best friend, so I ruined their lives in one stroke. My name is Alex, I'm 34, and until recently, I thought my life was perfect. I had a beautiful wife, Sarah, and a best friend, Josh. We spent a lot of time together, traveling, family dinners, weekend barbecues. Everyone looked at us and said, "What a perfect life." But, as they say, appearances can be deceiving. My suspicions started a few months ago. Sarah became overly attached to her phone. Constant messages, calls, laughter she tried to hide. I chalked it up to work, friends, or her just wanting a little personal space. But one day, I noticed something that changed everything. Glancing at her screen by accident, I saw the name Josh at the top of her message list. At first, I couldn't believe it. This was my best friend, someone I trusted as much as myself. But doubts began eating away at me. I decided not to act rashly but to gather more information. So I started observing. Their glances, light touches, moments when they suddenly disappeared together became so obvious that I could no longer ignore the truth. One evening, when Sarah said she'd be working late, I decided to check her story. I drove to her office, but her car wasn't there. My mind was racing, and I couldn't focus. I decided to call Josh just to talk, but he didn't answer either. In that moment, I knew they were together. That night, I couldn't sleep, thinking about how they could do this to me. But I still didn't have solid proof, and without it, any conversation would be pointless. I decided to play smart. The next day, I bought a small GPS tracker and installed it on Sarah's car. A few days later, I finally got my answer. The tracker showed that Sarah was driving to a country house, a place Josh and I often went to when we wanted to escape the city hustle. My heart was breaking, but I pulled myself together and decided to see everything with my own eyes. As I approached the house, I saw Josh's car parked next to it. The lights inside were on, and I could hear their laughter. My heart stopped, but I knew this moment would be key to my plan. I didn't make a scene that night. Instead, I decided to wait for the perfect moment to take my revenge. I gathered as much evidence as possible: photos, GPS recordings, and messages I managed to intercept. Then I meticulously planned my response. First, I contacted a lawyer and prepared divorce papers. Then, I arranged a meeting with Josh's employer, knowing he had access to confidential information he had been misusing for personal gain. Lastly, I composed an email with all the evidence, which I planned to send to all our mutual friends. On the day everything was set to unfold, I invited Sarah and Josh to dinner at our house. They had no idea I knew everything. At the table, I started talking about how much I valued them and how important it was to have such close people in my life. Their faces radiated confidence until I placed a folder of evidence on the table. "You thought I'd never find out?" I said coldly. Sarah turned red, and Josh couldn't even speak. It was a moment of triumph, but also the most painful one of my life. The evening was quiet, but a storm was raging inside me. My plan was ready, and today would be the point of no return. I invited all our mutual friends to a surprise gathering. The pretext was simple: celebrating new beginnings, though I didn't share the details. Sarah, as always, prepared meticulously for the event, not knowing this would be her last triumph in our circle. The first guests began to arrive, their cheerful smiles cutting into me like knives. Among them were those who admired Sarah and Josh, never knowing these two had shattered my trust in humanity. "Alex, you look great," greeted Jack, one of our mutual friends. "Thanks, Jack. This will be an evening you'll never forget," I replied with a hint of irony. Sarah appeared in the living room in her best dress, her eyes glowing with happiness, oblivious that her mask was about to come off. Josh arrived a little later, his confident demeanor only fueling my rage. When everyone had gathered, I raised my glass to begin my speech. The words came slowly, each one like a sharp knife. Friends, thank you for coming today. It means a lot to me. We've shared so many memories, so many stories. But today, I want to tell you a special story. I paused, watching Sarah and Josh's reactions. A story about betrayal, I added, locking eyes with them. The room fell silent. Sarah nervously gripped her glass, and Josh lowered his head. You know, I continued, in life, there are moments when we trust people the most. We open our hearts to them, invite them into our families. But what happens when those people betray us? Sarah glanced around, searching for support, but everyone was beginning to realize something was wrong. Sarah, Josh, would you like to say something? I asked them. They remained silent. I opened the folder with all the evidence and placed it on the table in front of everyone. Here's everything you need to know, friends. Betrayal, lies, manipulation. And you know what's the worst part? These people did it all behind my back. Whispers began spreading throughout the room. Sarah tried to say something but couldn't find the words. Alex, it's not what you think, she finally blurted out. Not what I think. Sarah, I know everything. I know about your meetings. I know where you were when I was working late nights. I know that my life was just a stage for your little game. Josh tried to intervene. Alex, You what? You're my best friend? The one I trusted? You're a traitor. And now, everyone knows it. My speech triggered a wave of emotions. Some friends looked shocked, others angry. A sense of justice slowly filled me, but I knew this wasn't over. Sarah ran out of the room, leaving her glass on the table. Josh followed her. But this time, their exit was far from triumphant. The next morning, after the big revelation, I woke up to dozens of messages on my phone. Friends, colleagues, and even people I hadn't seen in years were texting me about the previous evening. My exposé had become a sensation, and now everyone knew about Sarah and Josh's betrayal. But this was only the beginning. The first call of the day caught me off guard. It was Jenny, one of our mutual friends. Alex, hi. Can we talk? She asked nervously. Of course, Jenny. What's going on? I talked to Sarah this morning. She says you misunderstood everything. That it's all some kind of mistake. My heart skipped a beat. I had anticipated this move, but hearing it still hurt. A mistake? I have evidence, Jenny. They can't deny it. She says you fabricated everything to make her look bad. I gripped my phone so tightly I thought it might break. They were trying to paint me as the villain. And this was just the start. Throughout the day, more calls and messages poured in. Sarah and Josh were actively working to convince people of their innocence. They claimed I was paranoid, that I was just looking for a way to ruin their lives. But I knew the truth was on my side. Later that evening, I received a message from an unknown number. Alex, this is Laura. I work at the company where Josh works. I know something you'd find interesting. That text made me call immediately. Laura, hi. What do you mean? Josh has been using his connections at the company to manipulate finances. I noticed it a while ago but was afraid to say anything. Now that I know what he did to you, I can't stay silent anymore. My hands trembled. This was a new weapon in my arsenal. I arranged to meet Laura to learn more. The meeting took place in a small cafe. Laura brought documents that confirmed Josh had been involved in illegal financial activities at work. This is everything I managed to find. But I'm sure it's just the tip of the iceberg, she said, handing me the folder. Now I had even more ammunition to destroy Josh. And this time, it wasn't just about his personal life, it was about his career. I decided to organize another meeting with our mutual friends, but this time virtually. I gathered everyone in a video chat to present the new evidence. Friends, I know Sarah and Josh have been trying to convince you of their innocence. But let me show you what I've discovered. I began presenting the documents Laura had provided. The reaction was immediate. Many of our friends looked shocked. Some started asking questions, while others watched in silence. This isn't all. Josh is not just a traitor but a fraud. And Sarah, she helped him cover it up. The words I spoke created chaos. Arguments, outrage, disbelief. This was the moment when the truth fully came to light. My life began to return to normal, or so I thought. After exposing the truth about Sarah and Josh, I felt a sense of relief. But the peace didn't last long. While I was trying to rebuild my relationships with friends, Sarah and Josh decided to play a dangerous game. One morning, I received an anonymous email with the subject line, "You know we can destroy everything." The email contained just one sentence: "Your life isn't as perfect as you want everyone to think." Attached was a file I didn't dare open immediately. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen. Opening the file would mean I was ready to play by their rules. But I had to know what they were planning. When I finally opened the file, I was greeted with photos and screenshots bearing my name. They were moments from my past I had long forgotten. Pictures from parties, conversations with old acquaintances, even a few financial documents that could be made to look suspicious. Sarah and Josh had gathered everything that could put me in a compromising position. They were ready to use it to ruin my reputation. I realized this was just the beginning. That evening, I got a call from Josh. His voice was calm, but I could sense the malice. "Alex, I think we need to talk. In person." "What do you want, Josh?" "We just want to settle this peacefully. But you understand, don't you, that we have things that could change your life forever." I barely contained my anger. "You think you can blackmail me?" I replied. "I'm not afraid of you." "Oh, you should be. We know more about your secrets than you think." That conversation only confirmed they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. But I also knew blackmail was their last weapon. The next day, I took action. First, I contacted my legal advisors to prepare for any potential fallout. Second, I reached out to a few friends I trusted most and shared the situation with them. I needed their support. "Alex, this is awful," said Kate, a longtime friend. "But you need to be careful. If they expose all this—" "They won't expose anything, Kate. I'll find a way to stop them." My resolve only grew stronger. But I didn't know how far Sarah and Josh were willing to go. A few days later, I received an invitation to meet in a neutral location. Sarah and Josh wanted to talk, but I had a feeling it was a trap. Despite this, I agreed. When I entered the cafe, they were already waiting for me. Sarah looked confident, even smug. Josh sat next to her, his gaze cold. "We want to give you a chance," Sarah began. "You delete everything you have against us, and we'll forget about your sins." "Are you serious?" I couldn't hold back the sarcasm. "You think I'd agree to this?" "You don't have a choice," Josh interjected. "Your life can get much worse than you imagine." I stood up, ready to leave, but not before leaving them with a few words. "You don't understand one thing. I never play by someone else's rules." Alex stared at his laptop screen, nervously drumming his fingers on the table. In front of him was an open document filled with evidence. Every word, every proof was the culmination of his efforts. He knew this move would change everything. But was he ready for the consequences? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a message. It was from Laura. "Alex, are you sure about this? They won't back down. Sarah and Josh will do anything to destroy you." "I can't wait any longer, Laura," he replied, looking at her message. "They're threatening me, but I'm not afraid." He clicked the upload button and attached the file to an email. The message was brief. "This is the truth about Sarah and Josh. Let everyone know who they really are." Recipients: all their mutual friends, colleagues, and even a few journalists. Alex paused for a second, took a deep breath, and hit send. Within an hour, Alex's phone started buzzing with calls. People were shocked. Some sent messages of support. Others questioned if this was revenge. But then came another call, this time from Sarah. "What have you done?" Her voice was filled with despair, but also rage. "You've destroyed everything." "Me? You destroyed our life, Sarah. I just showed people the truth. You think you've won? Josh is already working on showing you in the worst light possible. We'll destroy you, Alex." "Good luck," he replied coldly and hung up. The next day, an article appeared in the local news. It described Alex's life, but the focus was on his alleged dark side. Josh had used old photos and messages to portray him as a manipulator. Laura quickly called. "Alex, have you seen this? They're trying to destroy your reputation." "I knew they'd do this," he replied, "but I still have cards up my sleeve." He decided to host an online conference where he laid out all the details of the betrayal, backing it up with recorded conversations and screenshots. Over 1,000 viewers tuned in to the live stream. His words had an explosive effect. The support from people far outweighed Josh and Sarah's efforts. Sarah couldn't handle it. She showed up at Alex's house unannounced. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. "What do you want, Sarah?" Alex asked coldly. "Make it stop. I can't live like this anymore," she said, sinking onto the couch and covering her face with her hands. "I was wrong. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" Alex laughed, but there was more pain than joy in his laughter. "You destroyed our lives, and now you want me to make it stop?" She didn't answer. Her silence spoke louder than any words. Alex stood by the window, watching the city sink into night. His thoughts were so chaotic that he barely noticed his coffee cup had gone cold in his hand. The decision he had made was risky. However, if Sarah fulfilled his condition, this could all finally end. The phone rang, and her name appeared on the screen. Alex answered after a few seconds of silence. "I agree," Sarah said quietly. "I'll do it, but no more than that." "No more?" Alex laughed. "Sarah, this isn't a negotiation. You'll apologize to everyone publicly, and you'll do it sincerely." "You don't understand how humiliating this is," she replied, her voice trembling but filled with desperation. "And do you understand how humiliating it was for me? Your apology is the least you can do." She stayed silent. Finally, with a heavy sigh, she said, "Fine, but you'll stop everything after this." Alex didn't respond. He simply hung up. This conversation was just the first step in his plan. The next day, Alex contacted a few friends who agreed to help organize a gathering. It was meant to be a reconciliation party, but its true purpose was to bring together everyone affected by the conflict. On Saturday evening, the large banquet hall was filled with people. Guests mingled, drank wine, but the tension in the air was palpable. Everyone knew this was no ordinary celebration. Sarah arrived almost at the last minute. She looked flawless, but Alex immediately noticed the nervousness in her movements. She sat at the table without looking at him, though she could feel his gaze. Josh didn't show up. It was expected, but no less significant. When everyone had gathered, Alex stood to speak. "Thank you for being here. Tonight, I want us all to leave this behind. But first, there's something that needs to be said." He looked at Sarah, and she understood it was her turn. Rising from her seat, she felt every eye on her. Her heart pounded so hard it seemed like everyone could hear it. "I want to apologize," she began. Her voice was firm at first but softened with every word. "To all of you. To Alex. I made a terrible mistake. And I'm very sorry." The pause that followed her words was almost unbearable. Guests whispered among themselves. Some looked shocked. Alex watched it all with a stony expression. He knew the apology was necessary, but he didn't know if it would change anything for him. After Sarah's speech, the evening took a different turn. Some people approached her, offering support, but most kept their distance. Alex saw her talking to Kate, and their conversation looked tense. Later, when most of the guests had left, Sarah approached Alex. "Is it over now?" she asked. "We'll see," he replied. His tone was neutral, but exhaustion was evident in his eyes. A week after Sarah's apology passed in strange silence. Alex rarely replied to her messages, but that didn't stop her. Something about his silence kept Sarah coming back again and again. She decided she had to find out if there was anything left of their former relationship. One evening, she gathered the courage to call him. "Alex, hi. Can we meet? I just want to talk." "All right," his voice was restrained. "Tomorrow morning, at the park. 10 o'clock. It was the first conversation without tension in a long time. Sarah felt relief, though she knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, the park was nearly empty. Alex was waiting for her on a bench, holding a cup of coffee. When Sarah approached, he looked up and gave a brief nod. "Sit down," he said, motioning to the spot next to him. They sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the birds and the rustling of the trees. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Sarah began. "Just don't tell me you want to fix everything," he interrupted. His voice was cold but not hostile. No, it's not that, she quickly replied. I just want to know if there's any chance for us to at least be friends. Alex laughed, but his laughter was bitter. Friends? After everything that happened? Sarah, are you serious? I made a mistake. I admit it. But I regret it. Regret it? He turned to her, looking directly into her eyes. Do you regret what happened, or do you regret getting caught? Sarah didn't know how to respond. Her silence said more than any words could. The conversation ended as tensely as it began, but Sarah decided not to give up. She knew Alex was still hiding something. His gaze, his words, everything pointed to the fact that something deeper lay beneath his calm demeanor. That evening, she decided to visit him unannounced. Approaching his house, she saw the lights on inside. Sarah knocked, but no one answered. She walked around the house and peeked through a window. What she saw made her heart stop. Alex was sitting at a table, a large stack of documents in front of him. On his laptop screen was an open letter. Sarah couldn't make out the contents, but the expression on his face alarmed her. It was the look of someone preparing for something big. The next day, she couldn't hold back and decided to get answers. When Alex left the house, Sarah slipped inside through an unlocked back door. She quickly found what she was looking for, the documents on the table. Among the papers were contracts, photographs, and a list of names. Sarah couldn't believe her eyes. Alex had been gathering information about people they knew. Her name was also on the list. She grabbed one of the documents when she heard the sound of the door opening. What are you doing here? Alex's voice froze her in place. He stood in the doorway, his gaze full of anger. You're spying on me? He continued. Alex, I just wanted to know what's going on. You're hiding something, Sarah replied, trying to stay composed. You weren't supposed to see this, he said, stepping closer. This is none of your business. But why is my name on this list? What are you planning? Alex remained silent. His silence spoke louder than any words could. Alex stood in the middle of the room, looking at Sarah holding the documents. Her face was filled with distrust and anger. He knew this conversation would change everything, but there was no time left to prepare. What does this all mean? Sarah asked, holding up one of the pages. Why is my name here? What are you really planning? Alex took a step forward, his eyes serious. You want to know the truth? Fine. I've been gathering this information to protect myself from you and Josh. You two already destroyed part of my life. I won't let you do it again. Protect yourself? Sarah laughed, but her laughter was filled with bitterness. You're collecting dirt on all our friends? That's not protection, Alex. That's paranoia. Paranoia? He took another step closer. Do you really think that? After everything you did? After all your fake apologies? Sarah looked away but didn't respond. Silence hung in the air. Alex walked to the table, took the documents from her hands, and began spreading them out on the surface. Look, he began, pointing to one of the sheets. These are Josh's financial schemes. I gathered evidence so he can't use his power against me anymore. Sarah glanced at the documents, but her expression remained unchanged. And this? She asked, pointing to the list of names. Is this for protection too? Alex didn't respond immediately. His gaze dimmed for a moment before he composed himself. Yes. I collected information on everyone who could be part of your plan. I can't afford to be careless. You think everyone is against you? Her voice began to rise. This isn't protection, Alex. This is paranoia. Alex took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He knew everything was at stake in this moment. You know, Sarah, you don't understand what it's like to be in my shoes. You didn't see how Josh manipulates people, how he destroys the lives of those who stand in his way. I couldn't take that risk. And what about me? Her voice softened, but the tension in it only grew. Why is my name on this list? Do you see me as an enemy too? Alex was silent for a few seconds, but his gaze spoke louder than words. I don't know who you've become, Sarah, he finally said, but I do know one thing. You're capable of betrayal. Those words hit her like thunder. She stepped back a few paces, but her eyes never left his. I tried to make things right, she whispered. But you won't give me a chance. Maybe because you've already lost that chance, he replied coldly. Sarah couldn't hold back any longer. She picked up one of the documents and threw it on the floor. You know what, Alex? If you want to fight, let's fight. But don't think I'll let you use this against me. Alex bent down and picked up the document. His hands were trembling, but he said nothing. You have a right to your anger, he finally said. But don't forget who started all this. She stared at him for a few seconds before abruptly turning and leaving the room. Her figure disappeared through the door, but her words lingered with Alex. Sarah sat in her apartment. The documents she had taken from Alex's house spread out before her. She reviewed each page multiple times, trying to figure out how to use the information against him. Her heart raced, and her hands trembled. She knew she was taking a dangerous step, but there was no turning back now. Thoughts of how Alex had exposed her to everyone wouldn't leave her alone. This wasn't just revenge. It was about reclaiming herself. She had to get ahead of him, and these documents were her key to success. Sarah decided to meet with Kate, their mutual friend who had always maintained a neutral stance in the conflict between her and Alex. At the cafe where they arranged to meet, Sarah looked confident, though inside she was boiling with emotions. Thanks for coming, Kate, she said as her friend sat across from her. I'm surprised you wanted to talk, Kate replied. After everything that happened. I know, Sarah interrupted, but I need to tell you something important. She pulled a few sheets from her bag and placed them in front of Kate. The expression on Kate's face gave Sarah her first taste of satisfaction. Is this real? Kate asked, flipping through the documents. As real as it gets, Sarah replied. Alex collected all this to manipulate us. He never trusted us, not even you. Kate looked confused. Her trust in Alex began to waver, but she wasn't ready to believe everything Sarah said just yet. Sarah knew words wouldn't be enough. She began carefully, but firmly. I know how this looks, Kate, but think about everything that's happened recently. Doesn't it seem like Alex has changed? Like he's dangerous? He's always been complicated, Kate admitted. But I can't believe he's capable of this. Then give me a chance to prove it, Sarah said. Meet me tomorrow. I'll show you more. Kate agreed, though doubt lingered in her eyes. Sarah knew this was only the beginning. She had to convince Kate, and then everyone else, that Alex wasn't who he claimed to be. The next day, Sarah arrived early for her meeting with Kate. She brought even more of Alex's collected documents and began explaining how each one could impact their circle of friends. Kate listened, but her reaction remained reserved. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a familiar voice. What are you two discussing? Sarah looked up and saw Alex. His face was tense, and his eyes burned with anger. He was holding a phone, and Sarah realized he had been eavesdropping on them. Alex, it's not what you think, Sarah began, trying to buy time. Not what I think. He stepped closer. You stole my documents and are using them against me? It's exactly what I think. Kate looked frightened. She didn't know whose side to take. Alex, calm down. She tried to intervene. Maybe this is just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Alex laughed, but there was no joy in his laugh. Sarah knew exactly what she was doing, and now you know it too. Sarah realized she could no longer hide her intentions. She stood and looked Alex straight in the eye. You forced me to do this, she said. You've been manipulating all of us, and now it ends. Alex said nothing. He simply turned and walked away, leaving Sarah and Kate in tense silence. Sarah knew the war had only just begun. Kate sat at her desk, the room dimly lit by a single lamp. Papers Sarah had given her, and her own notes were spread out in front of her. Her head was spinning. Everything that had happened was too convoluted, but Kate decided to find the truth herself. She had always been seen as the one seeking compromise, but now she realized there would be no compromise, only the truth. Her first step was to contact one of the names in the documents. She dialed a number she found in one of the files and waited for an answer. Hello? A voice came from the other end. Hi, this is Kate. We met at one of Alex and Sarah's parties. I need your help. What's going on? The voice sounded cautious. I can't explain everything over the phone. Can we meet? The person agreed. They arranged to meet at a small cafe in the city center. When Kate arrived at the cafe, the person was already waiting. It was Mark, an old friend of Alex who had distanced himself from their circle long ago. He looked uneasy. "What happened? Why do you want to talk to me?" he asked as soon as Kate sat down. "I found something in Alex's documents," she began, carefully choosing her words. "And I think you might know more about what's going on." She pulled a few sheets from her bag and showed them to Mark. His expression changed. This is related to an old issue," he finally said. "But you shouldn't have seen this." "Why? What is Alex hiding?" Kate pressed. Mark hesitated for a few seconds, as if weighing his words. Alex was working on something big. It wasn't just about Sarah and Josh. He was gathering evidence against many people in our circle. But it's not just about revenge. There's something deeper. Kate decided to dig further. She found an email address listed in the documents and wrote a message, pretending to be Alex's assistant. The response came quickly. The person on the other side agreed to a meeting. Kate arrived at the agreed location, a small office in a dilapidated building. Inside, a man who introduced himself as John was waiting for her. "You're from Alex?" he asked. "Yes," Kate replied, trying to appear confident. "I want to know what he was working on." John looked at her with a long, piercing stare before speaking. Alex was uncovering a corruption network. It started with Josh, but it turned out there's a whole group of influential people behind him. If this gets out, a lot of people in our circle will be in serious trouble. Kate felt her heart race. She couldn't believe Alex was involved in something so dangerous. Back home, Kate began piecing together everything she had learned. On one hand, she understood Alex had good intentions in trying to expose wrongdoing. On the other hand, his methods were questionable, and now Sarah and Josh could use this against him. She reopened the documents. They contained the names of people she knew well. Some of them were her friends. If Alex revealed this information, it would ruin their lives. Kate knew she had to make a choice, but any decision would come with consequences. Kate decided she could no longer stay on the sidelines. She had reviewed the documents, learned the truth about Alex and his plans, and now she had to confront him. She knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, but there was no more time to delay. The evening was cool as she arrived at Alex's house. His car was in the driveway, and the windows glowed in the darkness. She hesitated for a moment before knocking on the door. Alex answered almost immediately. His face showed a mix of surprise and caution. "Kate, what are you doing here?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "We need to talk," she said firmly. He invited her inside. The room was tense, the silence broken only by the sound of the clock. Kate spread the papers out on the table. "I know what you're doing, Alex," she began, "and I know why you're doing it. But this has gone too far." Alex sat across from her, arms crossed. His face remained unreadable, but his eyes betrayed his wariness. "You found the documents," he finally said, "and you're here to stop me?" "Exactly," she replied. "Alex, I understand your anger. I understand you want justice. But you're dragging too many people into this. People who shouldn't have to suffer." He leaned forward, his voice low but tense. "Kate, you don't understand. All these people, they were part of the system that betrayed me. They knew what was happening and did nothing. They're just as guilty as Sarah and Josh. And you think destroying their lives will make you happy?" she shouted. "You're just creating more destruction, Alex. This isn't justice. It's revenge." His eyes flashed, and for a moment, she saw the pain he was trying to hide. "You think this is easy for me?" he shouted, standing abruptly. "You think I don't see how this is destroying me? But what else can I do? They destroyed everything I had. And you expect me to just accept it?" Kate stood as well, her voice steady but full of emotion. "I want you to find another way. You've always been better than this. But right now, you're becoming just like them." His hands clenched into fists, but he didn't respond. Silence filled the room once again. "I'll help you," Kate finally said. "But only if you stop this. Let's find another way to expose Josh and Sarah without hurting innocent people." Alex looked at her, as if weighing her words. His voice softened. "Are you sure you're willing to help me? This is dangerous, Kate. If we can't see this through, we will," she replied firmly. "But we'll do it the right way." Kate entered the room, feeling a strange unease. Alex stood by the window, watching the evening horizon. His phone was in his hand, but he seemed deep in thought. Kate noticed he didn't realize she was there at first. "Alex, we need to talk," she said, breaking the silence. He turned to her, and for a moment, their eyes met. In that brief exchange, Kate thought she saw something deeper, a burden of secrets he carried. "What do you want to talk about?" His voice was calm but wary. Kate stepped closer, holding the papers she had found earlier. "This," she said, placing the documents on the table. "You're collecting dirt not just on Josh and Sarah. There are names here I know. People who've never betrayed you." Alex sighed and lowered his head. "It's not what you think, Kate." "Then explain it to me." Her voice was tense. "Why didn't you tell me about this? We agreed to work together." Alex raised his head and looked at her. "I couldn't tell you because I knew you wouldn't understand." His voice grew firmer. "It's a contingency plan. If we can't stop Josh and Sarah through normal means, I need leverage." "Leverage?" Kate stepped back, feeling her trust in him crumble. "You're using people, Alex. You're doing exactly what they did." He stepped closer, his eyes blazing with determination. "It's not like that, Kate. I'm doing this to protect us. They won't stop until they destroy everything." "But I can't support this," she said, her voice beginning to tremble. "This is wrong. You've forgotten what we're fighting for." Kate abruptly turned back to the table and began gathering the documents. "What are you doing?" Alex asked, his voice carrying a threatening edge. "I'm not going to let you use this," she replied. "It'll only make things worse." He grabbed her arm, stopping her. "Kate, if you leave now, you'll be their next target. Do you understand that? If that's the price I have to pay to stay true to myself, then so be it," she said, pulling free from his grasp. Alex remained silent, watching as she walked out of the room. Her figure disappeared through the door, but the sense of loss stayed with him. Kate sat at her small kitchen table, reviewing the list of names she had taken from Alex's documents. Her fingers nervously tapped against the wooden surface, and her heart raced. She knew she was taking a dangerous step, but staying silent was no longer an option. Her phone lay beside her. She had already written the first message but hesitated to hit send. Her fingers hovered over the screen as a voice in her head whispered, "What if you're wrong?" "No, I'm not wrong," she muttered to herself. She pressed send and watched the message go to Mark, the first name on the list. She knew this step could change everything, but had no idea how serious the consequences would be. Her phone rang a few minutes later. It was Mark. His voice sounded both surprised and wary. "Kate, what's this message? What are you talking about?" "Mark, I found something about Alex. He's been gathering information on many of us." "I can't stay silent," she quickly replied. "What did you find? What's going on?" His tone grew more serious. "I can't explain everything over the phone. Let's meet. It's important." They arranged to meet at the same cafe where she had spoken to others on the list. Kate knew it was risky, but she couldn't keep this to herself anymore. Mark arrived at the cafe on time. His eyes betrayed nervousness, but he tried to appear calm. Kate pulled copies of the documents from her bag to back up her claims. "Here, take a look for yourself," she said, handing over the papers. Mark stayed silent for a few minutes, carefully reviewing the pages. This is serious," he finally said. "But why are you showing this to me?" "Because Alex has gone too far," she replied. "I thought we were working together, but now I see he has his own plans. I can't support this." Mark shook his head but said nothing. His silence was unsettling. The next day, Kate received a message from an unknown number. "You've made a big mistake. We're watching you." Her hands trembled as she read the words. She knew Alex had found out about her actions, but she couldn't stop now. She began contacting others on the list, warning them about the danger. Each conversation revealed new details. Some of the people on the list had already suspected Alex was hiding something, but no one had proof. Now, Kate had given them that proof. Kate didn't expect Alex to come to her home. His sharp knock on the door startled her. When she opened it, his presence immediately made her feel on edge. He was calm, but his eyes told a different story. "Kate, we need to talk," he said, stepping inside without an invitation. "What are you doing here?" she asked, trying to hold her ground. "You've made this complicated," His voice was quiet but filled with menace. I warned you this was dangerous, but you didn't listen. Dangerous for whom? Me or you? She replied, staring him straight in the eyes. Alex stepped closer, leaning toward her. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. You're part of the game now, Kate, and this could end very badly. When Alex left, Kate was alone. She stared at her phone, wondering whether to continue. She knew everything now hinged on her decisions. She had taken the first step, but could she handle the consequences? Do you think Kate was right to interfere with Alex's plans, even at the risk of her own safety?